I, I don't know, I guess I should have written it out, 'cause sometimes I get talking and I've been kind of tired the last little while, so,
We'll
lose
cut you off
track
at,
of
we'll
time.
cut you off at 20 minutes.
But, yeah, I get better ideas when I'm sitting around. I'm not much for writing, because then by the time I get up to do my presentation, something else has happened and it throws me off, but I should do. But anyways, policing, and I was gonna do it around policing in poor neighborhoods, because, I mean, in our neighborhood, policing is, it's not the extreme, it is the norm. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's extreme, but it's the norm in poor neighborhoods, in the sense that, I've been talking to a couple of people, and I go, you know, like, when you look at our neighborhood, and there's two sides to it, there's our side and their side, and we think that it's a great neighborhood, and we feel safe, and there's nothing to it, but then when you read the news and people talk about the downtown east side, it's like, you know, don't go down there in the nighttime, and, you know, stay in the groups, and if you drive through, lock your doors, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. And then you have the police saying, well, because of crime and stuff like this, that, you know, we need more officers, and then it's just like, it's so far from the truth. There's an industry around poor people, and containing the poor people, and keeping them oppressed and marginalized. There's the industry around mental health, there's an industry around law and order, there's an industry around services, and it's a huge industry, and it's in their better interest to keep people like us down. It's, you know, you have to say that, because, I mean, I'm in the neighborhood, and I really don't see it. What I see is over like 4 or 5 police officers walking down the street, and to the point where there's no crime, but they will find something to do. So what do you have to do if there's no crime but harass people and and provoke them to the point that they will do something? Now you've got a reason to slam them on the ground, and hopefully there's a camera by, and somebody could see you, and you can add a story to that picture. And that's what I see. And I've lived in several poor communities here in Canada, and it's the same thing no matter where you go. It's the same thing. There must be a book, like a best practice book for the police that they follow, because it's always over policed. Yeah, and these neighborhoods, I'm never like, yeah, okay, I'm a big guy and whatever, but at the same time, I've never been accosted. I've never had some of these stories, like some of these things happen to me, and I grew up on the streets, you know, and I just don't see it, you know. And people in these places love I mean, they're very neighborly. I always know my neighbors in a poor community, whereas in a more upscale community, it's very, you know, dull about the status quo and showing off and not really getting to know the person, and nobody knows anybody. The police, I don't know what to say about the police, except that, to me, what I see again is them provoking people, so they would react, and now it gives them something to do and gives them a story. I mean, here in Canada, the last 20 years, violent crime has gone down. In the prison system, I forget the exact figures, somewhere around the mid-70s to the low 80 percentile range. People in prison are there on drug possession. Where you get most of your arrests are in poor neighborhoods where people don't have their outlook on life for a lot less. They're poor, marginalized, usually people of color. They're not really, I mean, you're on welfare, and there's another trap, you know. An average man on welfare that can work gets 625, 610. That works out to be, let's see, about $72 or $7,100 a year. That's $11,000 below the poverty line. You know, people don't realize that. Poverty line is $17,000. you're $11,000 below the poverty line, right? And then you have people who say, oh, well, you know, stop being lazy, go out and get a job. Well, I don't know what job you're in, but most people there who don't have an education, most of the jobs they get are a very remedial job, and it's usually, you know, minimum wage or manufacturing jobs, and manufacturing jobs have left this country. They've all gone to the third world to exploit the people there and make more profits. Right? So there's, I mean, the outlooks in jobs aren't that great. What's left to do? People have to survive. You know, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you know, let's face it. People are going to survive the way that they know best to survive, and you know they're gonna do it that way. You're on welfare. In our neighborhood, what's the average rent? $375. Oh, sorry,
That's the
$370.
shelter allowance, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
that's
the
right.
rent.
The average rent is 500, is
About 500, yeah.
425 now.
$425 to actually $425 to about $500.
And that's just for a room usually. You don't
Absolutely,
get
that's an
like
SRO, right? So
Yeah,
that's a
that's
single
not-
room. You live in a rundown building with slumlords. You have to share your bathroom with
Yeah.
several dozen other people.
No cooking facilities.
You know, yeah, no facilities to cook. Your doors, if you're blowing it, it falls down. Right? Yeah, after you pay your rent, you probably have, at tops, in the best case scenario, $100. So, I mean, $100 is not a lot of money. And that really upsets me every time I hear and listen to people and making these comments like, just stop using drugs with your money and go out and get a job and yada, yada, yada. There was a council guy from Surrey, City Hall, who came and tried to live in the downtown east side. Yeah. He couldn't, he didn't last.
No, I
The
know.
guy doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, so he doesn't have any vices, right? And his rent was paid, and he was given the money left over, and he couldn't do it. And he
He
said
couldn't
himself,
eat. He just said all I had to do is eat.
yeah,
And he
couldn't do it.
He lost a lot of weight, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
like,
he talked.
he goes, I don't know how they did it, but I couldn't do it. That's insane. And there was hardly any coverage given to that. Right,
That's
because
for
it's the
sure.
truth, and it will take, and they'll show that a lot of what's coming out of some people's mouths is just pure lies and stigmatization of other people. Like, you know, I thought that was, you know,
Very telling.
that was just so funny, you know, the guy, what would he last, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks?
Yeah, something like that,
Something
yeah.
like that,
Not even true.
you know, half a month and he was gone.
Yeah,
You have people, that's their life, they can't run away, you know?
yeah.
So if they do drugs, and I'm not saying people don't, can you blame them? You know, no outlooks, nothing. You're trapped. You're in a system that basically it criminalizes you. Criminalizes you for being a certain way, being a color. It criminalizes you for putting something into your system. It criminalizes you for, you know, all kinds of different things.
Being poor.
Yeah, being poor, exactly, you know, exactly. I don't see the use for, you know, we were talking about having like a day of, having a tent city. The police are always asking for more money, but yet, while the crime's going down, like we said. The other thing too, people's careers are made on the poor. So in the police department, in an area like the downtown east side, if you're stationed there, it adds on to your career, like, I forget, like 5 years or 4 years or something like that. Each year means 2 or 3 years. And it also accelerates you into supervisor. So you can move up into a corporal, a sergeant, or whatever, just by being down there. So again, they are creating an area where it's beneficial to them to create that area because it creates jobs. People go to court for tickets, jaywalking, things that other people take granted for. People down here are getting ticketed for. For what? So cops could go to court and get $100,000 a year. What was that paper? So many Vancouver police constables are making over $100,000 a year.
650 people,
Wow.
650 VPD constables are making over $100,000 a year. That's not from fighting crime. That's from courts. you know? You know, if they write so many tickets or do this or do that, that's all overtime. Like, overtime for what? I could see if it was actually fighting crimes and helping people, but you're not. You're helping yourself, you're helping other other people, but you're not doing anything to actually help the people that need your help, like, you know, to protect and serve. When I see that, I think of poor people, because they're the people that need the protection and the serving, not people who are rich and who can afford their own security.
Yeah.
And when it comes to policing, it's totally backwards.
Yeah.
They protect and serve the rich, you know, and come down to poor. Like we're saying that the police are set up for the rich. I was reading a story, and how police came around was, you're absolutely right. It was by rich people who got tired of poor people pickpocketing their pockets. So they came together and they hired a bunch of soldiers or people like that, and basically they were their armed force, and they walked around their own area. They didn't go around the city, and their job was to catch the pickpocketers and to throw them out at the city. And then the city thought it was a good idea, and basically policing derives from that, and it basically came from like England, France area, from the very wealthy people. So policing traditionally has been set up for the rich.
Moving
It's
people.
been never for the poor, to help the poor. It's always been for the rich to help protect their money from people like us.
That's so there.
Yeah.
Well, it's Newton right now.
Yeah.
Is that-
The black community has never had, I don't think, any real time to show or to, you know, to come together and to propel ourselves like some of the other races has, because it's been a constant colonial foot on the throat of the people. You know, slavery was passed, and people didn't want slavery to pass, so, you know, something else came up. South Africa, I've always been interested in the Boers War, and I was just doing some upgrading on that. And basically, the Boer War was because the Dutch wanted, I don't know if they were portrayed that way or they are that way. I don't really care. I'd like to get past that. But they were so racist to the fact that they got into war with England because they thought that the English was going to give the blacks the same rights as everybody else, and basically have respect for them as human beings and give them land that is their land anyways, and they didn't like that. And that basically, in a nutshell, is what the Boer War was about.
They were out to defend their privilege.
Yeah, and to keep the blacks out. And a lot of things developed from the Boers War.
And Canada was in on that one too, weren't they?
Yeah, you had
like a
people
dirty
get,
shirt.
The
Australians.
RCMP served in that.
That's right,
as a
yeah, that's
military
right.
force,
Yeah,
yeah.
they send them down to help fight. Yeah, it was weird.
Damn.
Australia, if you're a black, you couldn't get into that country probably until like the 60s or the 70s. They had their own Aboriginals, so they had a policy of, I forget what you call that kind of, it's in their culture of racism, where other people could come and migrate to their countries, but if you were black, you couldn't migrate to their countries. And they were, at the same time, they were trying to eradicate the Aboriginals off that country.
Still.
America, like, let's face it, they're just, it's all based on race and oppression. Became the richest country in the world on the backs of free work. And I see how I'm going all over the place. I should write it down and keep it, but I just keep thinking about a lot of this stuff, and
Can I just add a short little factoid on this
Sure,
America
yeah.
thing? I'm laying out the next issue of our journal, Radical
Yeah.
Criminology, and this guy's done a whole bunch of research. But what you were saying earlier about how it's not just the cops, but they're all the social workers and other people
Yeah,
that have
yeah.
jobs off it in the court systems, and so he did this calculation of not just the cops
yeah,
and the prison guards active
Yeah.
duty, but everybody who makes money on bailiffs and judges
Oh,
and
yeah,
clerks
sure.
and the whole
Sheriffs,
like
yeah.
and so he started adding up all of these people, and with the numbers on statewide basis,
Yeah.
I think it was like for 2013, it was over 7 million people were
Sure.
working in this industry.
Yeah.
And I was like 7.2 million, I think 7.1 million were just directly employed by this industry in the U.S. And it is a huge system.
It is.
It's a huge mechanism system.
Well, I think
and he's
that-
like, it's so important to see how all these relationships, they'll not just defend each other, but
Yeah.
they'll defend the system
System,
as
yeah.
a whole. And this is how
Yeah.
it's functioning, and how much money is
Because they have to
invested
defend
in
the system to
incarceration,
ensure their jobs.
in the incarceration nation kind of
Yeah.
idea, how much money is invested in that per year, and how much of a switch it would be if we really talked about mass
Yeah.
decarceration.
So and that's what I was getting at too, and I'm glad you brought that up because you brought it up better than I can bring it up. Like you have all these mechanisms in place. You know, Truman said, he warned about the military industrial complex, and I see a criminal industrial or prison industrial complex. There's two. You know, you have the military, and then below that you have the prison, and these two industries seem to be driving in America, and a lot of it is being branched off. And here in Canada, I see that happening a lot. Not so much in terms of the military complex, but if you actually do look, Canada does contribute a lot to the military, like in terms of technology, software, hardware, that sort of thing. We do contribute a lot. So I guess you can say we do have a military complex, not in the same sense as the Americans in terms of bodies, but in terms of the apparatus, the electrical parts and stuff like that, we do contribute a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just our society now. It seems I see us having our society is based on either war or crime, and they're both a crime, I say, but you know, it just seems that everything else is gone. We don't have any kind of other industry, or whatever industry we have is totally directed around supporting or maintaining those two things. And then the thing is, we're never going to really have a serious talk about and in prohibition or any of these things because it's not in the best interest of the rich or the big capitalists to have these conversations, because there goes your profits. Like, I mean, some of the biggest profits in the world are arms, right? And prison, that exactly. And then it comes next. People, slavery, free labor. That's the next slavery movement that's coming.
In the States, it's basically slavery. In Canada, it's an extra school.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you have the reserves, you have the ghettos. The ghettos is a form of the reserves because the ghettos were, and they call them the ghettos, why? To stigmatize the people that live there. Why would you call it the ghettos? Why would you not call it something else than that, right? But when you think about it, the ghettos is like, what's the first thing comes in your mind? Some big black guy, you know, robbing you or trying to, or, you know, selling you drugs to some ultra-conservative people. It's some guy like me, you know, luring his daughter out of his place, you know, because to them it was all, I mean, earlier in history, it was always about protecting the white women from the black men. That drove a lot of the laws in the States. That drove the drug laws. It was about keeping marijuana and that kind of stuff out of the Hispanics and the blacks, because who were influenced the white women and they would go there. And, you know, again, everything is always around race and keeping people separated. So I don't really see, I like to keep myself positive, but in reality I don't foresee a real serious talk having to really look at those issues. I think the only way that those issues are going to be changed is by a revolution of the people. And I mean, that's how everything or anything gets changed, by revolution. It doesn't change, it's not going to come by people sitting down and go, oh no, let's talk about it. It's not going to happen, because the powerful and the rich, need to protect their profits and, you know, their status quo. So the only how you're gonna have to do this, do it like the French.
Off with their heads.
Yeah, you know.
Hell
What was their
yes.
motto? Oh shoot, I forget the motto that they used. But they were forced to drop the last part of the motto, which was la mort, or death.
Liberty.
Liberty,
Freedom.
fraternity. What's it? Liberté, fraternité,
Égalité.
égalité, et les morts. Yeah. So they were able to keep the
death.
three and had to drop the other ones,
Oh,
but you know. I don't want to make it seem like I'm calling for. Well, yeah, I do see revolution. I mean, revolution can come in different forms. It doesn't necessarily have to
Yeah.
be an armed struggle. If it comes that way, and people really truly want change and don't want to live in the status quo and under this capitalist system, then maybe
It's time to get
Maybe-
organized.
it has to go that way.
Gotta get organized.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true.
I don't know. I think that's about it.
I think you did a very good job.
Well said.
You know,